Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Horizon Ignited Towards the Dying Lens, out July 1st on Nuclear Blast. The album has 10 tracks, 39 minutes in length, and this is the band's second full-length studio album. They are a Finnish melodic death metal band, but not your traditional Finnish melodic death metal band. I'll say more about that when we get into the sound of this record. As far as the design is concerned, this album is interesting because it gets better with every passing song. The opening tracks are the singles, so you're familiar with them, so there's nothing really new for you there, but there is a sense of familiarity. That's always good when you're getting into a record. But those are perhaps the more straightforward songs on the album. The album starts to become a little bit more complex, starts to become a little bit more dynamic musically and vocally as you progress, and therefore becoming more engaging. And when you have a record that's 39 minutes in length, 10 songs, and you finish off perhaps stronger than what you started, you're almost forcing the listener to come back to the beginning and listen to the record all over again. So if that was their goal, if their goal was to have this album be played out from start to finish, and when you get to the last song, you're ready to start all over again, it works. That's exactly how this album comes across. That's how this album feels, and that's kind of the sensation that you get when you reach that last second of that last song. Once you move into the sound, I mentioned it already, they are a melodic death metal band from Finland, but not a traditional melodic death metal band from Finland. Obviously, that's part of the DNA, it's part of who they are and where they're coming from, so it's undeniable that you're going to see traces of that, or at least the roots of their sound are there. But then once those roots start to grow into a tree and the tree starts to grow branches, everything else comes into play, and this is a band that's creating their own unique sound. I think they're trying to stay away from all the commonalities that you see in that genre coming out of that country and start to perhaps create something that's unique to them, that people can understand the difference, so that when you press play on a track or on a record, you know you're listening to Horizon Ignited. You don't want to be part of the forest, you want to stand out in the crowd. This record, the sound on this album, definitely starts to define their own space within the genre, their own space within their homeland, and what they can do going forward. It's a very unique sounding album from that perspective because it blends in styles from other bands, from other genres outside the country, and just allows them to become a little bit more mature, a little bit more refined in how they put it all together. And you see that maturity coming across even in the growth that the album offers. Now, not everything about the sound on this record is phenomenal. There are some things that are really well done, and there are some things that need some work. I feel like the drums need some work. At times, they felt a little bit flat. They felt like they stripped down the songs a little bit, didn't give the songs enough power, enough strength, enough heaviness. Overall, that unbalance showcases itself and it allows for the record to feel perhaps a little bit volatile, but I don't think you need that volatility. I think you could have used a little bit more consistency out of the drums, make them feel a little bit more powerful, a little bit thicker, more texture, more volume, so that the songs have a bigger presence, a bigger footprint. The fact that you constantly change it, that's constantly moving from song to song and within songs themselves, doesn't really let you sit straight. It doesn't let you feel necessarily comfortable in the pocket, and at times you almost need that. Because of the length of the album, you get away with it. If the album was 5 minutes, 10 minutes longer, it would become really a problem. So it never really gets to the point where it takes away from the experience, but it definitely could be better if it had more volume, it had more presence. Now, the guitars and keyboards are outstanding. You see more of their interaction as the album progresses. I really feel like the opening songs feel very straightforward, and as you get deeper and deeper, they start to become more complex. And the ability of having these two elements working with one another, sometimes in parallel, sometimes in unison, is what gives complexity to the sound and to how this album moves. I really like the keyboards because they don't take the spotlight of this record. They are an element, they add quality to the album, they become a little bit of the gap filler. They find the spaces in between the drums, bass, and guitars, and they go in there in order to create melody and atmosphere, and never really dictating where you're going to go with your experience. They're just an aroma. They're just part of everything that's helping around you, but not something that's going to drive where you're taking yourself throughout each and every single song. The guitars, the same thing. The guitars have the great ability to merge really well with the keyboards or separate themselves from the keyboards, have their own space, their own movement, and then create the ebbs and flows that exist throughout the entire record, adding heaviness, adding melody, pushing the album forward, slowing it down a little bit, controlling the different momentums of the record, controlling the different momentums of the songs. Great guitar playing all around, but that ability to really merge those two different elements together as one becomes the calling card of what their sound is going to be all about. Not just all about on this album, but all about going forward. Understanding where one ends and where the other one starts. How can we get the most out of both without allowing them to really bleed into one another and then make things a little bit murky? This album already shows a lot of maturity, a lot of growth when it comes to that perspective. It also shows a lot of maturity, a lot of growth when it comes to the vocals. The vocal performance is outstanding. One of the highlights, if not the highlight of the entire album. The cleans, the harshes, the harmonies between them, how they bring them together, how they separate from one another is just something to really marvel at. I'm a bigger fan of the clean vocals, and maybe that's why I feel like the album gets better with every passing song, because you're going to get more of clean vocals as you move down the line. But the harsh vocals play a very important role on how you're going to perceive this album. When the two are working together, it's something really interesting because you could hear both, but there's always one that takes precedent over the other, and that creates depth of movement, depth of sound, and depth of experience. When it's just the clean vocals, the melody that they bring to the forefront, they sound and they feel like finished melodic death metal. If there was a way for you to vocalize what that sound is all about coming out of that country, the clean vocals on this album really represent that aroma extremely well. Then the harsh vocals create the ebbs and flows. They give you the necessary pushes. They give the record the necessary jolts vocally so that you don't feel like the album is very flatline or that the album is very uniform from start to finish. So great, outstanding vocal performance from beginning all the way to the end, allowing this to be, in my humble opinion, to this point, the best sophomore album of 2022. It's just an album that has all the right pieces, has all the right elements. Obviously, there's still some work to be done. No record is going to be perfect, and definitely no second album is going to be perfect. But this record is a home run. It has great experience, has great sound, great flow from beginning to end, improving with every single track, really offering you a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different looks, merging a lot of different ideas, a lot of different sounds into that melting pot of melodic death metal, of finished melodic death metal, and coming out with a very unique sound experience that's going to be Horizon ignited, not just today, but tomorrow. As far as favorite songs are concerned, End of the Line is definitely a track to look at. Heavy, melodic, with power. The drums behind it have substance, not consistently, but they have a lot of substance, allowing the guitars to really push the song forward. The harsh vocals come over the top. They almost dominate, or they put their foot on top of everything else, allowing them to stand on a pedestal. This track also has great bass, and the great bass that is allowed to pop is overcompensating at times for the lack of heaviness on the drums. So it gives consistency and it gives a more robust experience to the sound all around by using a different element. The chorus is very melodic musically and vocally, which gives the song a sense of dynamic movement between verses and chorus and allows the experience at times to feel methodic, heavy, but always with the melody behind it to push it and not allow the song to completely stagnate. Next you have Aching Wings. This would be the ballad of the record. It sounds like a ballad, that doesn't necessarily feel like a ballad, but it is a ballad. So I'm going to go with that. This is the ballad of the record. Great keyboards and great guitars. The two together and the two separate from one another. But when they come together, the harmonies that they create together, it's really what the sound experience on this track is all about. And then you have clean vocals from start to finish. And those clean vocals feel organic. They feel emotional. They transport you to a different platform or to a different plateau that no track up to this point or even after this point is able to do. The tone in the delivery, the way those vocals come across is something out of this world, just phenomenal. You feel the pain, you feel every single emotion that is in those lyrics being represented vocally throughout the entire track. And then using some harsh vocals behind the clean vocals adds consistency, because you could hear the harsh vocals behind them, but not to the point that they're overshadowing what the clean vocals are doing. It's almost like a heavier echo, and it works so well on this track. It adds great momentum. It adds life. It adds heaviness to a song that musically may not be heavy, but is definitely emotionally heavy. So great track, great sound, great combination of guitars and keyboards, and then phenomenal vocals from start to finish. Last but not least, Eventide of Abysmal Grief. This is the closing track on the album. The keys open up the track, and then they keep themselves throughout the track but always in the darker moments. When the keyboards are coming in, when the more melodic side of the track is coming in, you have the clean vocals that go with it, and you feel like your stomach is kind of sinking in, and yourself, you're sinking in into the track. That's perhaps the most introspective moment that the song has to offer. Then the heavier side of the song comes out, musically and vocally, and you feel like there's this outburst of energy that just can't be controlled, and this creates incredible peaks and really deep valleys, making the song very dynamic but not necessarily super fluid. It's not a song that moves at an incredible pace, that has an incredible tempo, but just changing the eyesight of the listener from those valleys to those peaks is enough to make the song come to life and make the song feel like it has a lot more movement than what it actually does. Great track to finish off the record, and definitely you want to listen to the album again when this song is over. This is it, Horizon Ignited Towards the Dying Lens, out July 1st on Nuclear Blast. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.